What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com, along with a crossover episode here with Andrew Rotondi of the
The
Bronx
Bronx Pinstripes, yeah.
podcast. Thank you so much. Andrew, thanks for coming on. We've done this before, never with the stakes that the two of us now have in front of us.
Yes, Jeff, thanks for this is a crossover episode. Very happy to do this. We did this for that Dodgers Yankees series in early June. And if you remember, Soto missed that series. He went down with an injury like the week before, and it wasn't really anything serious. He never landed on the IL. But yeah, definitely larger stakes now. We got the matchup. Baseball got the matchup. Like if Manfred and the boys could draw it up, they would have picked Yankees Dodgers.
Yeah, and I'll just, I mean, what are the vibes in New York? Like, how confident are we both in this team? As far as the matchup itself, are people confident? Are people nervous? Do they feel like this is going to be a good series? Do they feel like the Yankees are going to win in a short series? Where are we at?
Oh yeah, Yankee sweep, no problem. Well, if you asked most Yankee fans over the summer, is this a World Series team? They would have said no, probably not. And the American League kind of opened up for them. The Orioles had a terrible second half. The Yankees were just so in the second half, really until September. The Orioles just sort of gave the Yankees the division by playing below 500 baseball, while the Yankees were playing basically barely above 500 baseball. And then the one team every Yankees fan to a man would have told you they don't want to face in the playoffs is the Houston Astros, just because of the history there.
Yeah.
And it's not even like the Houston Astros are a juggernaut this year. It's just sometimes history can get the better of you. And that is one team that would have definitely scared all Yankees fans. They got bounced early. They ended up playing the Royals, who, for as good of a season as the Royals had, coming off a 100-loss season, going to make the playoffs, like that's a great story. But I'm sorry, the Kansas City Royals are not really that great of a team. Certainly not something you're going to see in the playoffs every year. And then while the Guardians had a great season, I mean, they only finished a couple games back of the Yankees as far as win totals. That their rotation was really thin. They had a fantastic bullpen, but anytime you try and get through a 7-game series with 6 or 7 innings out of your bullpen every single night,
Yeah.
it's next to impossible to do. And that's what you saw with the Yankees getting to Clase, getting to Gaddis, getting to Cade Smith, which no one else had been able to get to. But when these guys saw them for 4th and 5th time in a matter of 5 days, eventually advantage goes to the hitter. And so I think that's ultimately was the edge for the Yankees. So Yankees, I think Yankees fans are definitely confident, although the Dodgers, despite I know some of the problems that their roster has right now, which I'm sure we'll talk about, the Dodgers are definitely the most worthy opponent that they're going to have faced so far in the playoffs.
Well, and that was going to be like, I think as a Dodger fan looking across to the Yankees, there's on one hand, it's impossible to disrespect Judge and Soto, and those guys are going to be terrifying every single time they come up. There's obviously names we're very familiar with at the top of the rotation, throughout the rotation, really. And yet I know there's a pocket of Dodgers fans who are looking and saying, okay, well, how good is the American League really? And to the point you just made, I mean, the Royals and the Guardians, like, look, the Mets, we can all probably make jokes about the Mets. Like, I don't think any of us on our show were necessarily terrified of the Mets, despite how good but at least they had been very good very recently. The
Mm-hmm.
Padres, I think you can make a case, are one of the 2 or 3 best teams in all of baseball. And the Dodgers had to go through them in the NLDS. And so from a Dodgers fan's perspective, we're looking at the Yankees, and it sounds like there's a little bit even amongst Yankee fans and saying, well, how good is this team really? We know we recognize a bunch of the names, but they haven't. They've cruised through the postseason, and yet they haven't done it against teams, to your point, that are necessarily quote unquote worthy opponents. It seems like.
That's true. And had the Yankees, so the first 2 games of the American League Championship Series, the Guardians kind of just handed the Yankees the game. I mean, they threw 5 wild pitches in the first game, and the Yankees scored a couple runs that way. The second game, the shortstop for the Guardians literally dropped an infield pop-up in the first inning to give the Yankees the game. And if that's how the rest of the series had gone, I would have felt nervous being like the Yankees weren't tested.
Yeah.
But the next 3 in Cleveland were all really good played, hard fought games. And the Yankees lost a devastating game 3 and they bounced back in won games 4 and 5. They came back in game 4. It was back and forth. They got to the bullpen, as I said. So at least recency bias says the Yankees were tested in the playoffs, and you got massive, like one guy you didn't mention is Giancarlo Stanton.
Yeah.
He had big home runs. He's had
Yeah.
big
5.
home runs all postseason. He won the ALCS MVP. Something about him in the playoffs, like I can't really explain it. He just locks in, and it's kind of like, he can't do the marathon anymore, but he'll go in for the 100-meter dash. Not
Yeah.
literally, he can't run, but he can hit for the 100-meter dash. So I think as far as the last 3 games go, the Yankees are feeling really good. But I agree with you. The road that the Dodgers had to go through was more difficult. No question.
And I will say this, like when you talk about how Yankees fans were feeling about their team, 3 or 4 months ago, the Dodgers fans would be in the same boat. And we'll get into some of the weaknesses of this roster. But I am known on our show as the eternal optimist, the guy who is always positive about this team and constantly believes that no, he'll figure it out. 0 for 22. Like, don't worry, it'll come around. And, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But the number of Dodgers fans that just assumed they were going to lose the division a couple months ago when the Padres and Diamondbacks cut the lead to like 3 games, and when seemingly every starting pitcher we had got hurt and the guys who were healthy were all disappointing. And so it is interesting. And yet I would say Dodgers fans now are probably as confident in this team as they have been at any point in the last 6 months because they've seen them do it. They got the boogeyman. You mentioned like not wanting to face the Astros. I mean, that was the Padres. The Padres beat us more than we beat them this regular season. It's a team that it would hurt emotionally to lose to. To get through that series down 2-1, to fight back and win that series in 5, to get through a Mets team after a disappointing game 5, come back and win game 6. Like, I do think in a weird way, Dodgers fans, for the first time all season, are actually confident in this group. Now, it doesn't have anything to do with the Yankees. It's not because they're looking across and saying, psh, the same way that we looked at the Mets. But I do think in a weird way, there's a confidence about this team and an excitement to say, I think we can hang with anybody. Now, whether or not a 7-game series that pans out, I think that's where Dodgers fans are at right now.
But that makes sense. I mean, if you make it to the World Series, you should be confident. I mean,
You think.
you won enough games in the regular season. You obviously won your playoff series. You should be confident at that
Yeah.
point. And so both teams should be confident going in. And I think the team that plays better this 7-game series will win, because I don't think any team has a discernible edge over the other. I mean, you can make argument like, is the Yankees the funny thing is the Yankees rotation is the most traditional left.
Yeah.
Or was the most traditional left in the playoffs. I know the Dodgers did some bullpen games.
Yeah.
The Guardians we saw do bullpen games. Like the Yankee starters, I'm not saying they're going, this isn't mid 90s Braves, everyone's pitching 7-8 innings, but they're getting into the 5th inning, which I guess is the new 7-inning start these days.
Yeah.
So what you've seen from that is, okay, they at least have some consistency out of the rotation, which takes some pressure off of the bullpen, which is still, despite their performance in the playoffs, still, I think, a weak link for them. There's a lot of names that you're still like, I guess the numbers say what they are, but I don't know if I trust it, because he hasn't done it before. And the Yankees had to put some guys in that Cleveland series in positions they really didn't want them to be in. And so I would say, though, when you're looking at the Yankees at this point, they're playing as good as they've played all season, and they're healthy. So for those reasons, you have to be confident.
Okay, you said you had a couple questions for me about the Dodgers. So talk me through kind of what people are curious about looking west.
Well, the first thing I looked at when the Yankees were going through the Royals and the Guardians, and I look at the lineup that the Dodgers are putting on, I'm like, well, this is not the same thing. Okay, like it's just one does not equal the other. The Dodgers lineup, obviously, the names in it, the talent in it, far superior. But the impact of Freddie Freeman, and I know he missed the end of the Mets series. Like, to me, that's a huge X factor. That makes the Dodgers lineup not easy, but much more manageable if you don't have Freddie Freeman in the middle of that lineup.
Yeah.
So what is his injury impact?
What's funny is the Dodgers are actually undefeated in games that Freddie Freeman has not started in the postseason. You want to hear a stupid stat that nobody should ever quote or point to as meaning of anything? I believe they were 3-0 in the NLCS when Freddie Freeman did not play. So
great, Freddie Freeman overrated. Got it.
Exactly. He's actually holding the Dodgers back.
Right.
Freeman, I mean, this is one of the biggest things was the Dodgers getting these 5 days off. And really, it's more like 7 days off because Freddie Freeman had a day off going into game 6 and then did not play in game 6. So he's going to have basically a full week off before game 1. He sprained his ankle the last few days of the regular season. And this was a 4 to 6 week injury is what he was told. And he basically looked at the doctor and said, that's really cute. And I appreciate that advice. But this is the postseason. So, strap me up, shoot me up, and let's give this thing a go. So it will be interesting. I mean, there were Dodger fans calling for him to not play in Game 6 because of how compromised he looked at the plate in Game 5. I believe he was like 0 for 5 in that game. The power looked sapped. He's limited laterally when it comes to first base. Um, all that said, World Series, 7 days off. Freddie Freeman, I just have to believe is going to make an impact at some point in this series. How big of an impact? Is there any power there, or is it more like a slap single to left field in a big spot kind of a thing? Is the compromised mobility left to right going to make a difference? I mean, these are all you hit the nail on the head. Like, that is a big deal, because I would say the Dodgers, for them to win this series, I've said all along, they're going to outscore teams. Pitching, bullpen, however you feel about those two things. The key to the Dodgers winning is to score 6.5 to 7 runs. They just set the National League record for most runs in a postseason series against the Mets, right after setting a record in the NLDS for most consecutive scoreless innings pitched. So that gives you a sense of what this team is capable. But at the end of the day, it is Shohei Ohtani and Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman and the depth of this lineup that's going to be the key, I think. And so whether or not Freddie Freeman's healthy, the shorter answer is we have no idea, but 7 days off has to help.
Sure, 7 days helps. And I know he'll play, right? He'll attempt to play, but how does it look? Because if Freddie Freeman is slapping singles to left field, I'll sign up for that right now.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I think I think it's gonna be a high scoring series. I think that both lineups are going to be grinds for the opposing pitching staff to navigate through. Even though the Yankees lineup is also a little bit top heavy, they did get performances out of the bottom of the lineup. Anthony Volpe has had a pretty good postseason. Not at the bottom, but Gleyber Torres has been fantastic leading off. Juan Soto has been exactly what you'd expect from Juan Soto. The funny thing is Aaron Judge has not had a good postseason.
Yeah, I looked up at that. He's been, below 100 weighted runs created plus in the postseason, which is, with Judge, he's still going to terrify me, but that was interesting to me.
He did hit the big home run off of Class A, which that was the game the Yankees lost, but otherwise he's pretty much been a no-show. And the Yankees have had so many opportunities to score, especially early in their games. I'd say both the Royals and the Guardian series could have looked a lot different with a couple more hits in the first inning, where they had second and third with one out, and then they just didn't get anything across. And so I think the Yankees, that just seems to be what they do. They kind of struggle with runners in scoring position, but I do think this is going to come down to offense. They didn't get any production out of Jazz Chisholm in the postseason. He's kind of just looks like he's been free swinging up there. Austin Wells, and I know, so this is one thing I want to talk to you about. Will Smith has been struggling.
Yeah.
Austin Wells for the Yankees been struggling. He had a really good summer for them when he got that starting catcher job. I think catchers just sort of wear down at the end of the year, and it's just hard to carry offensive production as a catcher throughout the postseason, especially when you're the starting catcher going to be playing every night, which you don't do in the regular season anymore. So is that what's going on with Smith?
Yeah, Smith has actually been really bad basically since just before the All-Star break. It was like an unbelievable first 2 months of the season, and had been a downward trend since. He was a guy that there were conversations of like, should he really be playing every day in the NLCS? I mentioned I'm the optimistic guy. He crushed a home run, a huge home run in Game 6 to dead center field, which I believe he actually had 2 home runs in that NLCS. And so, again, the optimist in me is like, oh man, maybe Will Smith found something, got in the cage, like figured something out, and there's going to be a little bit of a bounce back. He ended the series on a high note, but to your point, he has been a very polarizing guy in Dodger circles over the last 2-3 months, and that continued all the way through the postseason. Like I said, until Game 6 of the NLCS, I think he was like 1 for 3 with a couple walks and a home run. So I'm with you on that. Like, I think and this is a historical thing for him. It's not new that he's better in the first half than he is the second half. So I think both of those guys seem to me to be X factors, where it's like, can you get anything out of them so that they're not just a black hole in the lineup?
Well, luckily the Yankees had other guys pick up the slack, but the thing is, Austin Wells was hitting cleanup for the Yankees up through Game 2 of the ALCS. Crazy. And then they finally got him out of the cleanup hole and moved Stanton out of there. Stanton was like, how many home runs do I need to hit before I can finally get moved up to the cleanup spot? And they finally did that. But there is a bit of a drop off after Stanton, no question about it, because they have not found production out of like the 5, 6, and 7 guys in the order. Like I said, they got production out of Volpe at the bottom. Verdugo has been, the numbers don't look good, but the funny thing is, like, the hits he gets have been big. And out of a number 9 hitter, I'm fine with that. Like, if the one hit you get today drives in a run, like, good job, number 9 hitter.
Yeah. Yeah. That'll be, if I was telling Yankees fans something to keep their eye on, it's going to be the bottom of the Dodgers lineup and what kind of production. Tommy Edman just won NLCS MVP. He was actually, I believe,
He's
hitting
been great.
fourth in game 6. So you look at him, you think second base, shortstop, center field, little guy. He was hitting cleanup in game 6, and he hit a 2-run home run and a 2-run double, the two biggest hits of the game. But when you think about the Dodgers lineup, if things are going right, you've got Ohtani, Betts, and Freeman hitting 1, 2, and 3. Again, Freddie Freeman's health, we'll see. Teoscar Hernandez, who has been awesome all season, was 0 for 18 in the NLCS, figured it out in game 6 of the NLCS. It was his best game by far, crushing the ball. He hit a ball off the top of the wall in center field. I mean, like, it seemed like things got right. Max Muncy, here's a stat. He reached base 16 times in 26 plate appearances in the NLCS. Then you've got Will Smith, whatever he is. Then you have Tommy Edman. You've got Kike Hernandez, who is like the guy that everybody believes in the postseason. And so genuinely, if Freddie Freeman is right and he's in the top 3, you could pretty much make a case that like 4 through 8 or 4 through 9, you could just shuffle the deck and put whoever. If Kike Hernandez was batting cleanup against a lefty, Dodgers fans would not bat an eye. If Max Muncy was hitting fourth, Teoscar hitting fourth, if Will Smith figures it out. So I think that's the biggest thing for the Dodgers is being able to turn the lineup over and get production from the bottom of the lineup. And I'm glad you said that about the Yankees, because that was going to be one question. When I look at the big names, terrifying numbers from most of them, except for Judge. But again, he's still terrifying. Doesn't matter to me. The rest of them, when I look at the postseason, I was like, okay, I think there's some guys at the bottom of that order that maybe won't be quite as terrifying once I see them 2 or 3 times into this series.
Yeah, and Rizzo got some hits, but he broke his fingers at the end of the season, and he was activated for the championship series. And the funny thing is, he was okay offensively, mainly just singles, but he was terrible defensively. He made a couple of errors, and just he's looked off all year. It kind of does seem like the end for Rizzo, but like I wouldn't count on him as an offensive force in that lineup. So there is that stretch of lefties for the Yankees, which is Wells, Chisholm, and Rizzo, who they really have not gotten any production from this postseason. Yeah. That is the weak part of the Yankees lineup. I'm not saying it will be the weak part of the Yankees lineup in the World Series, but through the playoffs, that's been the weak part. The top of the order has carried it. So, yeah. Glaber's been awesome, Soto's been awesome, and Stanton has been awesome.
Yeah, and one thing I would say for Yankees fans to keep an eye on, there's 2 key relievers that might come back for the Dodgers in the World Series that were not available in the NLCS. And one of those guys is a guy named Alex Vesia. People may or may not be familiar with, had an incredible regular season. There's kind of 3 or 4 guys that Dodgers fans, it's like, we'll take our chances with these guys being awesome. Vesia's 3rd or 4th on that list. He's a lefty. He did not pitch at all in the NLCS, but if he's not available, the Dodgers will likely only have one left-handed relief pitcher in their bullpen, Anthony Banda, who's been very good for them. But again, that was something I noticed is it seems like there's a couple guys that maybe have struggled in general, but at least against left-handers in particular, if the Dodgers have a second lefty that they can deploy in big spots against Wells, against Rizzo, it does feel like that would be a big deal. So, but if the Dodgers only have one lefty, then you can only do that once a game.
Yankees OPS against lefties is far worse than it is against righties, up and down the board. Especially lefty starters have exposed them this year. But yeah, no, that's
no
certainly
lefty
huge.
starters for the Dodgers, so that's good news.
I know,
for you all.
and the Dodgers are going to go a bullpen game still, right? Like it's going to
that'll be interesting. I think they can line it up so there's only one scheduled bullpen game. One key for the Dodgers is Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who's their best pitcher. He is still on a setup where he needs 5 full days off in between starts. And part of that is because he got hurt and just came back towards the end of the season. And so how quote unquote built up is he remains to be seen. Now, will they tweak this in the World Series? We'll see. But if he pitches game 2, he can come back in game 6 on his normal rest. So theoretically, the Dodgers could pitch either Buehler or Flaherty. I would guess Buehler in game 1 and game 5, and then Flaherty would be game 3 and game 7 with one bullpen game. But the bullpen game would be game 4, the middle day on 3 games in 3 days in New York. So it's not how you would draw up a bullpen game, but if the Dodgers wanted to, they could get to a place where they only need one bullpen game in a full 7-game series.
And that's why I say I'm not sitting here telling you the Yankees rotation has been excellent, because it hasn't. But we know who the 4 starters are. Totally. Cole's going game 1, Rodon's going game 2, Clark Schmidt 3, and Luis Gil 4. Are those guys have they all been hittable this postseason at one point? Yes. But at least those are the 4 starters,
Yeah.
and there's at least some confidence they're going to get you 4 plus. I mean, hopefully Cole goes more than 4 plus, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Where I think just wearing down of the Dodgers bullpen, I think is going to be a huge factor here. And the Yankees bullpen, when we last talked, Clay Holmes was the closer. He blew 13 saves before they finally
I
got
like
him
that.
out of that
I
role.
think we should trust him, Andrew. I think talk to Boone, say, hey, we like this guy in the ninth, maybe 6 outs, even 8th and ninth, close games. Let's get him in there.
It was funny. I was getting crap from Guardians fans because I was saying the Yankees should dominate this series. They're like, "How can you say that? The teams were so close this year." I'm like, if the Yankees pulled their closer after blowing, I don't know, 7 saves instead of 13, the Yankees would have won 100 games.
Yeah.
So like, there you go. But Luke Weaver's been really good. Holmes blew a couple games this postseason already. So Weaver's been the standout guy. Canley's been really good. And then one X factor for the Yankees is Nestor Cortez is likely going to be activated in the postseason. Going into the playoffs, he was going to probably be in the bullpen.
Okay.
I think they'll still do that, especially because he hasn't pitched since the regular season. But that would mean Stroman, who didn't even sniff the mound at any point this postseason, wasn't on the division series roster. He's probably coming off the roster. And Nestor, I expect if he's on the roster to pitch because he was really good at the end of the season.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned that these teams' ability to wear down. I mean, the Yankees were first in the league in walk rate. I believe the Dodgers were third. They set all sorts of records against the Mets for walks in a series. And so the bullpen is getting these names are going to be familiar. We both lived through, I mean, yours was a 5-game series. Ours was 6. It felt longer. But the thing the Dodgers did is they just saw all of the Mets relievers. In the first 2 or 3 games, it was like there were so many walks that these guys just came in. And that was one thing that the Dodgers tried really hard to do, which I assume they will again. They really, really, really believe in like the more times you see a reliever against a particular guy, the worse it is going to get for a reliever. And so they've been really intentional about like saving guys from being used in spots they don't need to be used, having like Blake Trinan come in to face 8, 9, and 1 every once in a while, rather than just 2, 3, and 4 every single time. So again, if the Yankees can get to Buehler, Yamamoto, Flaherty in those first 3 games and force short starts and force the Dodgers to go to their leverage arms early, the Dodgers believe it's going to hurt them in the end. So whichever team gets to the bullpen quickest in games 1 and 2, I think is going to give you a hint as far as what this might look like once you get to games 5, 6, and 7, if necessary.
I think that's a great call. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, for the Yankees, I think that I still think they have the edge in the starting pitching. So if they do not outpitch the Dodgers, that again, that doesn't mean you got to go 6 shutout innings. You just have to outpitch them, right? You just that's what they're looking for. And I think that is the path to the Yankees winning this series.
Yeah, and for the Dodgers, all we've said is, hey, starting pitchers, just match the guy. Keep us close because
the offense will pick it up.
Offense will pick it up. And I mean, I don't know like what the reputation is. The Dodgers bullpen has been very, very good. Like Blake Trinan right now looks like he could be like when Blake Trinan is right, there are not a ton of guys that are better than him in all of Major League Baseball. I mean, you guys probably more familiar back when he was with the A's and he had that stupid season of like 1 ERA. I mean, he has looked unhittable at times. Evan Phillips is another guy in that spot that has looked really, really good. And then Michael Kopech, who throws 101 and like turned into the best reliever in baseball when he came over from the White Sox. So the Dodgers have 3 guys. If Vesey is in that group of 4th, that I think they feel like really, really confident are all high leverage. They can mix and match. So for the Dodgers, it really is. Starting pitching is just like, please, can you get us like 4 to 5 innings, like 2 to 3 earned runs? And we're cool with that. Like, just get us that so that we can save the bullpen and we hope we score 6 or 7. And that's how this game's going to go.
Damn. I know you've been a baseball fan for a long time, but boy, is it different, huh?
No, totally. Well, and again, and it's somewhat, it feels somewhat unique to the team the Dodgers have. Like Jack Flaherty went 7 shutout in game 1 of the NLCS and then got absolutely lit up in game 5. Yamamoto's on pretty much a pitch count. I mean, and Walker Buehler, like, has been pretty good in the postseason, but this is a guy that Dodgers fans wanted DFA'd like 3 months ago because he's just like 2 Tommy John surgeries. It's just, he's not necessarily the same guy, but he gets up for big moments. And so I think, you know, those guys, the low expectations for starting pitching, high expectations for the bullpen and the offense, I would say are where Dodgers fans are at.
Yeah. And listen, the Yankees got to the Guardians bullpen and they were the best bullpen in baseball. So it's tough to do for a 7-game series. That's all I'll say. So,
well, let me ask you two things before we close, and I'll answer the same. Give me one guy that's going to be an X factor in your estimation for the Yankees. And my rule on our show is like, for me, it can't be Ohtani or Betts or somebody like that. It's got to be somebody slightly off the radar. And then the second question I'll ask you is if you've logged a prediction for this series, what do you have as your prediction?
we have not logged predictions yet. We're going to
Okay.
be doing our episode on Thursday, actually. So I guess I'll
Okay.
save it for my listeners for then.
I assume you're picking the Yankees to win. Is that a safe
Well,
bet?
I mean, at this point, I think, yeah.
Okay. Fair. Fair.
um, I guess I can guess who you're going to go with too. So, okay.
Yeah.
So an X factor. The funny thing is when we did this for the last series, you said Teoscar Hernandez and he had a monster series against the
Yeah.
Yankees. So
It's true.
you
I felt
definitely,
really good about that. I felt really good about that.
yeah. So you definitely nailed that. And I think someone is going to need to pick up the slack after Stanton. And I don't know who's going to be hitting there exactly. So I'll just go out and say I think Jazz Chisholm will have a good
Okay.
series, an impactful series. If he's on base, he can run. He's very athletic. So he can also steal bases. So I think not only do the Yankees need someone behind Stanton, but I think Jazz Chisholm finally is going to have some hits this postseason.
Okay. You can tell me if this is a cop out because I don't think this guy is a quote unquote superstar level, although he is being paid at that level. But Yoshinobu Yamamoto, the starter, I think is a guy just to keep an eye on because he pitched really poorly in the first game of the Padres series, got lit up. He came back in a winner take all game 5 against the Padres and was awesome. He's also a guy who went to Yankee Stadium in that series and pitched really, really well.
Really good. He was
And
great.
this is the series where, like I said, game 2 and game 6, he lines up to be in two pretty critical spots. And so I think if the Dodgers, that's the one game where I think as a Dodgers fan, I'm thinking that's the one chance we have to win the starting pitching battle is whenever that guy's on the mound, I would take my chances with him. And so if he can give the Dodgers, it's not going to be 7 innings, but if he can give them 5 shutout innings or, 5 innings, 1 earned and be efficient and effective, I think that could be like a big swing in the way that this series plays out. And yes, as far as my pick goes, just so you know, I've got Dodgers in 6. And I want to say this, I picked Dodgers in 5 in the NLDS and was correct. And I picked Dodgers in 6 in the NLCS. So we're going for a perfect streak, Andrew, but I got Dodgers in 6 in this one.
All I know is no matter who wins the series, whether it's 6 games, even if it's 4 games, these things are going to be 5-hour slogs. This is going to be a lot of pitching changes, a lot of long at bats. I think it's going to be high scoring. I think these are going to be some long games.
I love it. I love it. Well, let our folks know if they want to follow along with some Yankee people over the next couple of weeks, where they can find you, where they can find your show.
Yeah, Bronx Pinstripes, the Bronx Pinstripes show. This is our 10th season. Hopefully they can win a World Series in our 10th season. We do recaps after every single playoff game. So you can find us on YouTube streaming live. Maybe Dodgers fans, if the Yankees lose a game, would want to tune in to see our misery. That's fine as long as the views count.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what we've been doing. Appreciate you having me on, and this is going to be awesome. I mean, this is the most expensive World Series I also saw to get in the building since the 2016 Cubs Cleveland series, which for reasons are obvious why that series was expensive. But yeah, this is I would definitely say a bigger World Series than Diamondbacks Rangers, don't you think?
Yeah, safe to say. I was trying to go back. I mean, obviously, something like when you had New York and Philadelphia, I think it was 15 years ago. Like those are two markets, Yankees, Mets. But reality, Dodgers and Yankees, just as franchises, teams, and then add in Ohtani and Betts versus Judge and Soto, and it's just like kind of insane.
I mean
the most expensive pitchers ever in Cole and Yamamoto as well. So there's guys everywhere.
I would also venture to guess the highest payroll of any World
Hey, it's
Series
just
matchup.
a small market Dodgers over here trying to compete with the Mets and Yankees, you know?
The MVPs from both leagues. I don't know if that's ever happened as well, facing off. And I think I also saw something that the guys who produced the most WAR in each league are going to be facing off, which is also kind of the same thing as the MVP. But you know, all of those sort of fun storylines. Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
Love it. Love it. Well, we're at Dodger Blue 1958, kind of the same deal as you. We've got post-game shows that'll go up and live shows basically every night. So if people, after they watch your show, want to come and laugh at some Dodger fans, you're welcome to join us over on Dodger Blue 1958. That is Andrew. I am Jeff, folks. Thanks for joining us. And let's have fun this series. I think it's going to be a great series. I'm not going to enjoy basically any minute of it until it's over and only if the Dodgers win. Otherwise, I think I'm going to be miserable for a couple of weeks. So thanks everybody for watching, and we will both on our own platforms. See you soon.
Thanks, Jeff.